Now here's what individuals don't understand. I'll stop after this. When we look at an area like taxation, say corporate taxation, it sounds like we're taxing corporations, but in reality a corporate tax is an optional tax determined by the individual who has the power to make the decision. In the case of the Walmart family, the decision made by Walmart is to end health benefits for their workers that are part-time workers because the Walton kids need those $25 billion to continue to grow that they each have in their bank account. So the corporate tax isn't a tax on the people who generate profits who own Walmart. They simply choose to pass that on to the workers. Now, a smaller business has a choice. Do I cut wages? I can't do that. People won't work for me. Do I raise prices? Can't do that. People will go shop elsewhere. Do I eliminate future expansion and growth? Probably. Most of all, I just have to take the hit. So when you indemnify yourself as a small business and incorporate, and now are subjected to corporate taxation, you're the one paying that tax. And so this is a very punitive tax on small businesses. Well, by creating savings that reduce the welfare rolls, just in one area we save $700 to $800 million, we now can completely absorb the elimination of that tax without any consequence to the state treasurer, and now create something that actually works for small business people. And by creating revenue through the sale and distribution to local communities and other things, we actually now can shift the tax code so that instead of saying to a person who invests in rural Iowa or urban Iowa, we're going to tax the heck out of you based upon randomly assessed values, we actually can link the property tax to the purchase price and create a real incentive to revitalize communities. And because we're now not putting in roads and poles and sewers, we actually have a net gain even though we reformed the tax code. And now we begin the process of growing Iowa. Now, when we talked about the Every Working Iowa Economic Empowerment Act, there was a young man who got it in Northwood, Iowa in Worth County. I would not have chosen this. But as we talked about the potential of individuals to pull their resources together, and Milton Friedman said capitalism is the best system ever created to get people who can't stand each other to work together. This young man who had the things in his ears and piercings and tats everywhere, looked like he was stoned most of the meeting. When I was talking to young people that they could bring a Smoky Row there and bring live entertainment in and they would be able to pull their resources together, all of a sudden he lit up. He said, dudes, this is awesome. If we had something like this, we could pull our money together and put a strip club next to the casino. Okay. And like, he got it. He got it. That's not what I would invest my money in. He got it. You don't have to go and ask Microsoft to come in and take your money, or Google to come in and take your money. I thought this was off. I apologize. You don't have to do that. You get a chance. This is being difficult. You get a chance to get together with your friends and neighbors and others, and be the solution you're seeking. And we keep our young people here. For the Bruce Rastettlers and the Jack Hatches and Terry Bransteads, this doesn't work out so well. For the rest of us, it begins the process of really rebuilding our economy. So, on that note, I don't know if anyone has any questions or comments, or we hate those ideas, or...
I like everything you said. I mean, I wish there was more people like you running for office in different areas, you know. You got to change up the ideas. Like you said, from 1993 to now, we got a lot of people that are in similar places holding, and it just seems to keep getting worse and worse, you know. I'd like to be interested in seeing some people, too, with plans on, like, rehabilitation, you know, for people either with whatever their problem is, you know. They're trying to make it harder for people that have felonies to rent a place or even get a job or keep a license, and it just causes the recidivism to keep coming back and back, you know.
Well, one of the things we said is that, we need to have a policy of treatment on demand in the state. Treatment is cheaper than prison, and we already have prison on demand. Now, some people say, we don't have prison on demand. I said, well, if you don't think we have prison on demand, walk up to your neighborhood cop and punch them. Or go to your local bank and demand that they give you money at the tip of a gun. And they will incarcerate you, and they will incarcerate you for a long time. And if you're eager enough, they will lock you up for the rest of your life and provide for you the rest of your life at $35,000 a year plus. So we can afford prison on demand, we can afford treatment on demand, period. The second thing is that we ought to say to individuals, when you've done your time, that's it. It doesn't make sense to have people leave prison with massive crippling fines that they have no way of paying, that prevent them from competing economically, which then puts them in jeopardy of recidivism. But the flip side is, now that bankers are investing in prisons, it's not like we want third graders to know how to read either. So you have to remove the profit motive. Right now, the poverty industry in Iowa is bigger than the pornography industry in America. Failure, misery, poverty are extremely profitable. Whether it's enrolling a child in special education and collecting 3 times a check, or busting up a family and creating a huge industry built around the failure of a family. A professor out of Northwestern years ago wrote a book that it takes one poor family in Chicago to sustain an entire neighborhood in the suburbs. It's true then, it's true now. Any other questions?
I have a comment.
Okay.
Since we're like the meth capital of the United States, I would like to see people that have meth problems treated differently. You know, like there is a pharmaceutical answer for this. You know, there's got to be something we can do about this
Well, you know,
epidemic.
years ago there was a gentleman by the name of Kalonji Sadiq. He used to be a Black Panther. He was instrumental in helping bring KUCB radio into existence.
Mm-hmm.
Ran for mayor a long time ago, and you know, he and some of his associates got involved in the drug trade. They started off thinking, if we could sell drugs, they called them dead soldiers. You know, they were already addicted. So if they were buying drugs from you know, the movement would have the capital to finance its activities. Of course, that didn't work. Some went to jail, some became drug kingpins momentarily, and some became addicts. So a few years later, Kalonji and I sat down and we had a conversation, and he said, I want to create a program that gets about 100 hardcore addicts off the street. These are people who knock folks in the head, have $1,000 a day habits. I mean, it was bad. I said, Kalonji, the problem isn't the $1 million to $1.5 million it's going to cost to create and operate the program. It's the $25 to $30 million you're going to take out of the pockets of the businessmen in this community who control those drugs. That's where the real problem is. You know, it's not, I mean, sometimes we act as if when people sell drugs, they basically take that money, roll it up, use it as kindling for firewood, as opposed to becoming owners of construction companies or politicians. We act as if the drug trade exists independent of the wealth it generates and the men who control that wealth. So it's important for us as we approach drug strategies to address the profit motive associated with it. This is where legalization just rips into it. We had more heroin-related deaths in Iowa than ever this past year. A decade ago, I wrote about the resurgence of heroin. I remember a few years ago when your chief of police here talked about, oh, heroin's back, and I just laughed. I'm like, I wrote about that years earlier. You know, politicians and bureaucrats are either clueless or they deserve Academy Awards for convincing us they have no idea what's going on. But the fact is that if we fully legalized marijuana, it would rip into the crack trade, meth trade, resurgence of heroin, because for the most part we know individuals would choose to operate in the legal realm rather than to operate in the illegal realm. We know that. It's the same thing that happened with bootlegging. When people could sell liquor again legally, then they stopped using Tommy guns to promote illegal liquor sales. We have a precedent in America. not making this up. We know what would happen. Except we have an option with weed to do it in a way that keeps the profits and the prosperity in our state. Grow it in the state. In order to sell it in the state, you have permits. The permits are supplied at the time you supply the site to sell in the stores. Sold here in Iowa. You have an Iowa-based industry. And then you also have the benefit of being able to create a legal hemp industry, where everything can be made from rope to lotion to paper. And that's not new either. I'm not sitting here going, I had a vision. Weed can't just be smoked, it can be used to make paper. You know, we know the many uses of it. It can be made into ethanol, which would be so much more responsible than grain-based ethanol, and then I wouldn't have had to pay $6.95 for a pound of bacon, a pound of hamburger this morning. It's ridiculous. Food prices would go down. And again, if we lived in a state where there was moral consistency, but I'm reading an article where Chuck Grassley says, well, I like to drink my bourbon or something, whatever he drinks, Wild Turkey. Well, you know, Chuck Grassley can sit up in the Capitol and drink whiskey at the end of a long drink whiskey. They want to beat their wives and their kids and shoot their neighbors. I mean, at some point we have to end the absurdity. And it would reduce significantly the whole meth trade, too. But also it would provide resources to increase the ability in every county to provide mental health services.
It'd bring young people back.
I had a question, too, about it. Wouldn't that make us a little more independent, too, from the federal government, instead of abiding by what laws they want us to pass to get their money, if we had something like that going on?
Yes.
The extra tax dollars coming into it, instead of making different absurd laws just to get checks from people. I think that would make us more free, more independent, kind of like what it's supposed to be, instead of a large, corrupt federal government.
Yes.
I think that'd be awesome if I seen that across the board.
Absolutely. It would reduce federal dependency significantly. And understand, the only real influence the federal government has is a check. You know, it's just like when they say, well, if you let 18-year-olds who are about to go to war drink, we're going to withhold transportation funds. So we pass a law that says 18-year-olds that are about to go off to war can't have a drink, can't have a beer. They can go die for their country, they can't have a beer. So you know, what is the benefit of that morality when that kid then turns 21 or they get to a college campus and that's when they start drinking, as opposed to turning 18 at home and their dad has beer with them and they learn how to drink more responsibly. You know, I mean, the rationale for why we have the laws we have doesn't pass the test. Because at the end of the day, the consequences are dire. So this would, yes, go a long way towards creating a self-sufficient